Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Centric. This being a show where we talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season premiere of Hunters. A great season premiere. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. I do like this story bouncing basically between three different stories. Myers, Jonah's, and Millie's. And I think, first and foremost, well, we should start with the opening, where we had that woman, which, based on her name, just credits-wise, I'm like, oh, is that who I think she is? I think she's connected to Harriet. Well, I also think it's interesting, too. It's like, that was, because it didn't even cross my mind when I was watching it, when it was like, oh, yeah, this is like in 70, that was in 72. It's like, oh, that's 5 years before this all went down in season 1. And then, like, we got the rewind of, well, we were 5 years in the past, and then we went 2 years in the past because we were in 75, 2 years before the events of season 1, and that's where we get into the ins and outs. Well, finishing up everything that went down in 72. The woman's asking, like, oh, are you a Jew? Because this place has a mezuzah, which I feel like I've heard that term before the show. Before this episode, I was like, oh, I feel like mezuzah. I was like, that sounds familiar. I feel like that might be something I have. Maybe I've heard it before. Maybe I've heard the word before, but just never knew exactly what it was. Until this. But yeah, the way the woman was grilling him, I'm like, is she actually one? But then, like, he saw the tattoo, so I'm assuming she is. But this guy, his shop, he's the guy that helped Adolf and Eva, as well as others, disappear. So, obviously, I wonder how she got on the track of them. I mean, I guess, like, there's already been theories and stuff, and maybe there was already some evidence to some extent that Hitler was still alive and out and about. So, maybe she had already, like, followed any trails. But I'm curious, like, what made her know, like, he was still out there. I mean, I wonder, having rewatched season 1, I don't remember if Meyer recognized her. Well, I say Meyer, but Willem, I wonder did he recognize her in that regard, in that capacity, last season or not? When they only had like one scene together before, like, the car crashed into the river and stuff because she tried to kill him. So either way, the brutality, but I guess it's like, right, like, we're not holding any punches here. It's like, oh, like, basically, God give you eyes to see so you can know right from wrong, but it's like, yeah, I don't think you need these anymore. And she carved his eyes out and put them on those statues that guy was making. I was like, that's brutal, and you're putting it in such a public place for everyone to see as well. So I guess in her mind, it's like, these eyes will do better here. But regardless, moving on, let's kind of start off with Meyer's circumstances. Obviously, set 2 years before Jonah killed him. He's telling that story. I thought was kind of an interesting story. Like, partway through, I was like, okay, I get what the message is. It's like, oh, I don't need any help. You can leave me. God's going to take care of me. And when you finally meet with God, God's like, I sent you a car, a boat, and a helicopter. You're just a schmuck. Which is like, oh, there's a little funniness to it, but also it's like, it's this weird thing where you're like, oh, that's kind of a funny, interesting story. But you also look at it as like man, that sucks, because it's not really Meyer, it's Wilhelm. So it's kind of like, haha, yeah, but I know who you are. So it's one of those weird juxtapositions you have to kind of like adjust for it in some extent. But he sees some guy off in the distance looking at him, and it seemed like Meyer recognized him. And then later on, the same guy shows up at his office being like, hey, I know who you are, like, oh, it's nice to see you, Wilhelm. So it's like, oh, interesting. It's like, so someone who knew who you were before everyone, and he started writing a list. He was like, I think he came up with like at least like 4 names of like, could it be this person, this person, and this person? I love that even Ruth was on that note, because obviously he meets with Ruth like a year from now, and he finds out, oh, she didn't know about me. So it's interesting for him to have suspected her at one point in time, because it's like, right, maybe she finally saw through everything and knew that I wasn't the real Meyer. It's like, no, she never saw through it. So I think that's such an interesting juxtaposition, considering, because he was actually, well, because Wilhelm always liked her regardless, even back at the camps, he liked her. So it is interesting, like, he was actually happy to see her again, but also happy to see that his facade, his lie, stood the test, because, if it could fool Ruth, who was in love with Meyer, then, I just thought that was so interesting that she was kind of on the suspect list. But he finds out later on, after he kind of draws the guy out, this guy is someone that he knew, and some other person from their past. It's basically blackmailing any Nazis that are in the U.S. And it's like, oh, let's expose their life if they don't give us money. And this guy happened to, because he fell on hard times. And the moment the guy reached out to him, it's like, hey, this is a golden opportunity. He's like, oh, don't worry. I'm going to take care of him. I'm going to put food in your belly. I'm going to write you a check. I'm like, he's going to do neither. He's going to do none of the above. Because immediately you're like, right. If Jonah had to be the one that figured it out, if no one else knew, that means like the entire season, or at least any parts of Meyer's story, who knows if it's going to be the entire season or not, but anytime we come back to Meyer, it's most likely going to be him killing and silencing anyone that knew the truth about him. Because it's like, I'm sure one of the names on that list was probably like the surgeon that he ended up killing in the season 1 finale. So that still leaves at least one more person he has to take care of. That guy, well, I guess he never tracked down a surgeon. I guess Ruth did, but I guess he never did in a grand scheme of things. So, but that's kind of an interesting development on his front. So it's like, yeah, doing everything he can to keep his secret, because this life he built for himself, he's not about to have it all taken away from him. Because as he wanted to try and, tell Jonah last episode, it's like, I am a Jew. I've lived as a Jew for all these years. So I'm the same as, it's like, no, but you're basing all that on the name, on the stories that you stole, these stories, this life. That name is not yours. You took it. You stole it from someone else. You have no right to be like, oh, I'm a Jew now because I've lived as a Jew for. It's like, no, you're only doing that because you stole that from someone else. So that's just an interesting development I didn't see coming with that side of things. Then we catch up with once again that actor and character thing where I was about to, instead of saying Jonah, I was about to say Logan. Jonah is in Paris, and it's been 2 years since season 1, almost like real life equivalency, because it's been over 2 years since the first season. We find out he's engaged. I figured he was at that brothel because he was looking for someone specific, but I guess like to kind of lay low, he like pays for a good time, a lady of the night, but doesn't partake. Because we ended up finding out he's engaged, which I was like, considering this lifestyle, like you ended up having to push away your friends and the people that you cared about, that I thought you would never kind of go down that route again. But I guess it's like, this is a lonely path of death and destruction, and you need some happiness. You need something to latch onto. You need to have a life outside of all of this, And ultimately, we end up finding out the person he was looking for ended up being Biff. I was like, wow, I didn't think Biff was going to be taken off the board so quickly. Which, to be fair, he got his nose blown off, looking very Red Skull-esque. That I was like, is he actually dead? I guess it's assumed. I just wasn't. But I guess it's like, right. He was kind of like a main, but also background player last season. So now it's like, hey, he's the one that actually drops the info to him, and like, oh, I heard about what happened in Spain, which you're like, what happened in Spain? Because I was like, is he the only one here? Seems like he is. So I wonder, did Roxy go back home because of her? She was probably away from her daughter for so long and everything going kablooey, which is also interesting too, because Harriet seemed like she had a vested interest in Jonah. Obviously they still don't know about Joe. Lonnie, maybe he just kind of got tired too. I don't know. Because obviously, we do see, we saw her in the intro of the show, is in the title credits, Carol Kane. I haven't seen the trailer for this season, so I didn't know what to fully expect. I think all I saw was the teaser for it. But, so I didn't know Mindy, because she walked away in the season finale, just like trying to spend as much time with her daughter as possible, just kind of being done with all of this. So it's interesting to see that Jonah's on his own, and whatever went down in Spain, that's interesting. Because also what's interesting too for Jonah is saying that this was going to be his end, because he didn't want this whole, now that he, I guess, found some form of happiness, Biff is kind of like the last, I don't know if he was necessarily like the last one on their list, like of all the Nazis that they're aware of that are scattered to the wind, the ones that they're aware of. But I guess for him, it's like, I need one big target, and you're the target that got away, Biff. So you could be my God, what's the word? My magnum opus, essentially. But it's like, no, no, no. Hitler's still alive. You actually met the colonel. That's his wife. Like, they didn't actually die. They didn't, like, off themselves. Like, they escaped. I can help you. But he ends up putting Biff down. It's like, cool. That conniving guy is like, he can't be allowed to just do what he, he can't just be allowed to go free. So he's taken care of. And now he has another mission in place, and this is going to be it. This is going to be the end result. And he's telling his fiance like it's going to be the end. But she did point out, like, who's Meyer? And he's like, what? She's like, that's the name you said in your dream. You were screaming out. And he's like, I don't know any Meyer, which immediately makes you get a little suspicious, because you're like, I mean, a lot of these Nazis have been playing the long game. And I was like, she couldn't be, right? She can't be. She can't be playing, like, the long game for him, but you never know. You feel like before now you would have done something, but I don't know. It's probably just like I know nothing about you. I mean, especially considering he doesn't go by his own name. He's like, oh, I'm Sam. Oh, my mom's saying you can invite anyone to the wedding. It's like, well, everyone he has close to him is gone, like, in the sense that those who aren't dead, he's already kind of, like, pushed away. Like, obviously it's this fake identity he created for himself. And I wonder in his mind, is he more Sam than he is Jonah these days? Who knows? But we did see at one point in time he's walking down the street and he heard Meyer call out to him, and it's haunting him. Just like, what's his face, the musician that they ended up killing earlier on in the season, last season. That guy told him about the ringing that was going to be in his ear, and obviously it stuck for a while for Jonah. But Meyer, of course, that was because Meyer was everything. It's even like what Biff said. It's like, oh, like, what? Look what he turned you into. Which I'm like, does Biff and everyone else know? Like, on the Nazi side, do they know that Meyer was actually Wilhelm? Like, how? I guess that might just, to the general public, what is everyone thinking? Like, oh, Meyer died or he was killed. It's such a shame, such a loss. Is the hunters, are they the only ones that know the truth about Meyer? Like, I don't know if you would publicly put that out there. I mean, you saw how the hunters took it. I mean, obviously, like, he was their leader. He was the one that kind of put them on this crusade. And now for it to be like it was all a lie. He was kind of a major player amongst the Nazis. So Biff, like I said, the way Biff talked, it's not like he knew. I feel like if he knew, he would have rubbed that in, like, he would have rubbed a little dirt in that wound for Jonah. But it's just kind of like, oh, what did Meyer turn you into? So it didn't seem like he was coming at it from like a Wilhelm thing, but who knows? But my point is just like the guilt of who he had to become, that because Meyer was the first person he directly killed. Obviously, someone had to step in every other way, but this is it. Hey, I killed him, especially considering, like, right, his grandmother was kind of whispering to him, trying to be the angel on his shoulder, and now you have Meyer being the ghost of devilish past, kind of whispering to you, especially because he's the one that rooted out that darkness and you brought it to the fore. Now it's not even your grandmother you hear. It's not your grandmother. He never saw her, but he would hear her. But I mean, the season 1 finale, he was eating the soup, and in front of him was like a younger version of him and his Safta. And so now for it to be Meyer haunting him like that, because it's like, right, I put so much stock in you. You were kind of the person I latched onto, and I had to be the one to put you down. And, because Jonah did so much to try and prove himself, and now that's stuck. That's the ringing in his ear now manifesting itself like that. So that's going to be definitely because I think he was in I don't know if it was like something else. I saw a glimpse of something. I think he might be even in the thumbnail of the official trailer. I didn't watch it, but like of the teaser, he might have been in it. I don't remember, but I knew like Al Pacino was coming back as Meyer, and I was like, how the hell is that playing? I was like, wait, is he actually still alive? But I was like, no. Oh, he's super dead, but we're going to be doing some flashbacks with him. But other than that, we had the Millie side of things. Obviously, her coming at things from the perspective of, like, she spent the last 2 years not hunting a bunch of Nazis. One in particular, it took her 2 years, which is kind of wild when you think about how much, like, the hunters got done in that time frame. I mean, just in the time Jonah was with them. To be fair, they weren't going the legal judicial route like Millie was. but I mean, we find out, like, obviously she hasn't spoken to her dad or her other siblings. I don't know if it's about her being gay. Maybe it's just not being there when her mom died. Or because she makes it seem like it's just work. She dived so deeply into work that she kind of disappeared. Her and Maria, like, that's so sad because it's like, right, I don't think they ever officially got back together last season. Like, her mom was like, I know the way you look at her, like, I know what's what, and she's always been taking care of me. Don't push away something good in your life. And I think, hunting Nazis, losing her mom, and just everything that went down last season too, in conjunction with all that. And now on top of that, like, she ended up pushing everyone away. She arrests this priest. There were testimonies in court, but it's not enough. It's like, the judge is like, it's not enough. Like, just, is the justice system fair? The question is, it's meant to be. Is it always? No. We can all agree to that. But for Millie, it's just kind of like, what was the point then? 2 years of my life, I burned everything to do this and couldn't even get justice for these families. Tried to do things the legal and right way, and it blew up in our faces. Home duty, even the priest had the audacity to show up at the courtroom with like an oxygen tank, and he looks at Millie and he winks at her. It's like the bastard knew he was going to get off because there was nothing that actually proved he was who they said he was, It's like, oh yeah, 30 years, trauma could mess with your memory, so maybe he's not the person they think he is. So, and Millie ended up, she ended up running into Danny, who wrote a book about everything. Which the moment Danny's name popped up, I'm like, who the hell is Danny? And I was like, oh, right, the journalist. I was like, right. He wrote a book about it. It's made big waves and stuff like that, which I love that, it's like, oh, so-and-so wants to buy the rights to it. She's like, I don't know who that is, but if you make me look like this Farrah Fawcett, did she say Farrah Fawcett or did she say Meryl? Yeah, I think, if you make me look like this Farrah Fawcett white girl, I'm going to destroy you. So, but obviously she's kind of been kept out of the loop with the hunters and stuff like that. I guess she hasn't been hunting them like, Jonah thought she would be. I guess it's like, maybe because at some point they went quiet and even she didn't really know what was what. I think it's like at a point where she was kind of lost where, hey, I tried to do things the right way. It didn't work out and I had nothing to show for it. I wasn't able to get justice for all the people, all those deaths, all the people hurt. Nor do I have any like personal life to show for it either because, well, my family and I are on our best terms. Me and Maria, I pushed her away. So the only person she really has is Jonah. And even when she called his house phone and heard, it's like, wow, it's kind of nice hearing her voice. I mean, I never even knew her, but it still feels nice to hear her voice. And even saying like, right, she wishes she had some kind of recording of her mom to kind of hold on to. At least Jonah has that, Ruth's voice on the, answer machine. But she's like, yeah, I just want to call you up. And she's like, I don't even know if it was for you or is it really just for me? Because she's like, and it's been over 2 years and I never reached out. So I don't know if she was, like I said, actively hunting them, but then they eventually went quiet. So, but it seems like she was like, I had no contact with you at all. I didn't try to reach out to you. She's like, I kept busy, but maybe it was also just easier in her mind to let him go off, do whatever he's doing. She's like, I didn't bother checking in on you because she's the one that kind of steered him in a better direction when it came to Travis. Like, don't put him down, like listen to your grandmother's voice. Like, don't let like that darkness kind of drown in you. But it's like, yeah, like what do you do when the bad guys keep winning? And, Millie ended up taking things into her own hands and ended up killing because she wanted the pastor to admit who he was, and he refused to, and she would, who knows what the end result would have been. Was it she always planned to kill him? It seemed accidental. She at least, made sure to pick up the casing, so the phone ringing off the hook like that, part of me was wondering like, oh, could it be like some secret like Nazi plan or something? But it's like, well, he was sadly a pillar of the community, so people are probably checking in on him. A lot of people are happy he got released because they're like, oh, like this was all a mistake. And for, once again, Millie, who tried so hard to get Jonah from going down that path, which sadly he ended up going down that path regardless, now she has too, especially because she is a God-fearing woman. And now on top of it, it's like, you're telling, like, I what have I done? Like, what have I become? You know, this doesn't, you know, is this the only type of justice? Because it's almost like this, it fits like nicely with the conversation she had with Meyer in that instance of, especially when they were in jail, but also when she eventually later on started working with the Hunters. So, and just at kind of a pretty low point, lo and behold, who shows up because he got her message? It's Jonah being like, yo, I gotta, you know, some information about Hitler still being alive. So, and then we have the ending where, I mean, it has been over 2 years, so we have no idea what Joe's been through and what they've necessarily, because I think the whole point was like having Joe be like the kind of instructor, having been a soldier and stuff like that. That maybe that's what role he plays, but he's cutting up the food for Hitler with the knife and sitting down and having dinner with him and his wife. And I'm like, dude, what did they do? I mean, 2 years of doing whatever they did to break him, you know, who knows if we're going to really get into the ins and outs of that. Once again, especially considering, like, to our knowledge, based on just this one episode, it seems like no one knew. They just assume, like, oh, Joe packed up and left. Like, they don't know that he's been, like, under duress and all this stuff for the past 2 years. So it's definitely going to be really interesting to see ultimately where all this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.